Hello friends, tonight we're going to take a look at the Beretta ARX. This is going to be an extremely long video, and I'm sorry that the gun is so big it doesn't even fit in frame. Anyhow, this is a curious gun. It's sort of like a cult TV show. You didn't want it when it was here, and now that it's gone, you kind of reminisce about how great it was, and you take to the internet forums to raise hell about how it needs to be brought back from the dead. This is one of those things. But I'll tell you up front, I really like these. So this isn't going to be a review as much as it's going to be just kind of a show and tell. Since these guns are kind of rare, this is a chance for you to kind of get a close look at this gun. Most folks just didn't like this rifle. Very few people enjoyed it, and that's a damn shame if you ask me. I generally only review stuff that y'all might want to buy. This isn't the sort of channel where I kind of pull rare stuff out of my collection and talk about it, but that's what this video is going to be. Also, since I can't get the whole tuna-shaped monstrosity in frame at once, I'm going to supplement the video with some terrible photos and some other footage. But mostly, you know what the gun looks like, and you want to see details up close anyhow, so we'll focus on that. Maybe it'll give you an idea of what it's like to actually handle one of these. The ARX almost seems poised for a comeback, or at least for the prices to surge on Gunbroker now that it's no longer in production. So let's talk about what it truly is, what it does well, and why it wasn't popular. I've seen very little good information on this rifle. Most folks are simply repeating tidbits of sort of dubious information that they've heard elsewhere. The Beretta ARX is a modern polymer short-stroke piston service rifle. It is of the same generation of rifles as the FN SCAR, the Bushmaster ACR, and the CZ805 Bren. The rifles of this generation are the fancy ones you see in video games, the sort that look so damn cool they wouldn't be out of place in a space movie of some kind. Between us, these sorts of rifles usually aren't as good as a decent AR-15. Perhaps that's my American bias, but the AR-15 has had decades of development, much of it the sort of communal market development that happens when a million different companies are making a million different variations of the same product. And that product will grow and change over time, and the best features sort of become standard. The SCAR, the ACR, the 805 Bren, and the ARX, they haven't had that sort of development. Those guns are made by one company, and they're so damn expensive, very few people own them. And in that case, why would they when Aero Precision makes a rifle that is just as reliable for less than 1,000 buckaroonies? But I'm reviewing the ARX because it's a bit different, even from the other fancy new rifles, or FNRs, as I call them. Though still not as refined as the AR-15 to my clumsy American hands, pumped full of GMO corn and horse antibiotics, the ARX might be the best of the fancy new rifles. We've talked about some of the reasons why folks don't like fancy new rifles as much, but what characteristics do these guns really have? What defines them? We've mentioned the polymer. These guns use a ton of polymer to keep weight and costs down, even though they're still obscenely expensive, and they're usually heavier than they ought to be, even with all that polymer. And those guns tend to have a short-stroke gas system, unlike the AR-15's sort of semi-direct impingement system. And we'll talk about exactly what that means and how it works when we take the ARX apart. Fancy new rifles tend to have great barrels, and despite their insane price tags, lousy triggers as a general rule. Due to the triggers and the piston mechanism, these guns aren't any more accurate than a regular-ass AR-15, and many of them are less so. Fancy new rifles are often more ambidextrous than AR-15s, and none of them more so than the ARX. FNRs usually take AR-15 magazines, though not always. FNRs often have folding stocks, making them more compact. Thanks to the short-stroke piston system, FNRs are usually less pleasant to shoot than a cheap AR-15, dishing out a little more recoil and therefore slowing you down just a tad. Also, what the fuck is a tad? I don't know, maybe that's a metric unit. And last of all, I found the FNRs to be less reliable than DI AR-15s under certain circumstances, but more reliable under others. This is critical as I still consistently hear the myth that DI guns are unreliable because they shit where they eat, as the dum-dums buying Springfield XDs at the gun counter love to shout. Piston guns are the best guns, they say. But I say never trust a guy buying an XD, am I right? Because I really want to set the comments aflame, I'd like for you to know that in my experience, a DI AR-15 is the most reliable variety of rifle available for purchase with human money on this human planet. So go ahead and flip your shit about that. And since I mentioned 5.56 recoil, a few of you are already so livid that you can barely contain it. I'm not saying that any 5.56 has a lot of recoil. I'm saying that relative to DI AR-15s, piston guns have more. But the ARX breaks a lot of these fancy new rifle rules. It's lightweight. The recoil impulse is, frankly, lovely. The ergonomics are mostly good. Not amazing, but totally fine. Unlike other FNRs, the action doesn't have a million extra open holes to let dirt in for no reason. The ARX is, despite what you might think from looking at this thing, this gun shaped like a variety of previously unknown sea life, this thing is extremely pleasant to use. It's a real pleasure. And look, for the sake of jackassery, yes, I'm poking fun at the FNRs. They are good rifles, but they do have some problems that need to be solved. Most of these are problems that the AR-15 solved many moons ago. But you see my point, especially if you've used one of these new rifles. They just lack refinement. So let's look at what the ARX brings to the rifle party, and maybe we'll see why it feels just a little bit more refined than its competitors. Features. As we said, the ARX is a short-stroke gas piston service rifle. Specifically, this gun was developed to be the Italian service rifle. In 2008, Beretta started delivery of the ARX and testing began. A few changes were made and the gun was officially adopted in 2012, I believe it was. And slowly the ARX is replacing the Beretta AR-70/90, which is a gun that I'd like to try at some point. Beretta always wins those Italian military contracts, and when we look at this gun, we have to understand that it was designed specifically to get that contract, not to please our civilian hands and tastes. When you purchase the ARX, you're purchasing the closest legally available facsimile to that Italian service rifle. Various Italian weirdnesses and all, like the fucking strange sling and sling attachment points. If the gun had sold well, I have no doubt that Beretta would have later sold us a gun better suited to our specific American tastes, but it didn't sell. When you first see the gun, you are immediately struck by the strange shape, the heavy use of polymer. All of the FNRs use a lot of polymer, but the ARX takes that shit to the next level. The folding and collapsible stock is polymer. I prefer the ARX stock to the one on the SCAR. As polymer stocks go, it's really damn good. The lower receiver portion, housing the trigger group, is polymer, with the grip molded right into it. The fire control group is also mostly polymer, though the safety selector is metal. These sling loops all over the rifle are metal for strength. There are many, many attachment points on this rifle. The top and side 1913 rails are what feels like aluminum, while the lower rail, which is a factory accessory, is polymer. I took them off because I don't like backup sights, but the factory sights are polymer as well. This rifle comes with those polymer sights, a soft case, a spare magazine, which is a very good magazine, by the way, and a sling that attaches to those points. The sling is actually quite nice, despite being made out of seatbelt material. With this seatbelt material, when you see the sling out of context, it hardly looks like a piece of military equipment or even something for tactical civilians. It looks more like something that you'd include in your, I don't know, home autoerotic asphyxiation toolkit. It's going to do the job, I guess, for both things. I don't really know what I was talking about there. I'm not sure if this is the issued sling or not, but I'm almost certain that it must be. It's very well made and works just fine, though I don't use it. Instead, I mount slings with these little QD doodads that I stuck on the rails. The internet cannot seem to agree on how much this rifle weighs. Most sources say 6.8 pounds. That felt like too much to me, so I weighed it. Mine, without all this shit on it, weighs 6.4 pounds according to my terrible bathroom scale. Either my scale is wrong because it was never intended to weigh rifles, or the internet is wrong. Either way, the gun feels very light, and it's much, much lighter than the other fancy new rifles, but it's still heavier than my pencil-barreled AR-15s without optics and lights. But hell, I have some rifles with optics and lights on them that weigh less than 6.8 pounds, and maybe one that weighs less than 6.4, I think, too. So, it's still not that light. This gun is fully ambidextrous. Everything is ambi. You can swap ejection from one side to the other, the charging handle. There's an identical safety on either side. Same for the bolt and magazine release buttons. It's very, very cool. And perhaps most interestingly, this gun has a quick change barrel. If you SBR this son of a bitch, there's a cool 10.5-inch barrel that drops right in. There was talk of a 300 blackout barrel, but the gun's been discontinued. That ain't happening. I also consider it a feature that this gun has a pencil barrel. It's cold hammer forged and chrome lined, as is often the European custom, with a very thin profile to cut down on weight. It's a pencil. It's a traditional pencil. I just absolutely detest heavy barrels. For me, they offer no benefit on the excess weight that is detrimental to actual shooting performance on the move. I'd much rather have something thin like that. But more importantly than, the other benefits of the QD system, it makes the gas system and barrel astoundingly easy to clean. I've never been able to clean a gun as thoroughly and quickly as this one. I know what you're thinking. This rifle looks fucking nuts. How the hell does it work? I'll show you. First, the controls, then we'll look inside the rifle. The safety selector is ambi, and the levers are metal and have a stiff 90-degree throw. Both sides feel identical. My trigger has been replaced by one from Shooting Sight, but the stock one is polymer, along with most parts of the trigger group. The Shooting Sight model is so good, maybe we'll take a quick look at that at some point in the video. These slidey buttons, identical on either side, are the bolt release. You can either actuate them with your trigger finger or with your support hand when you swap a magazine. Either works very well. I started using my trigger finger, but I've been experimenting with my support thumb. Inside this fenced-in area underneath those buttons, behind the magazine well, is the bolt hold open button. Press this in while you pull the bolt to the rear and it'll lock the action open. You can also press up on the bolt release slidery things, but that takes a little more effort. Just use the button on the bottom. There's a magazine release button on both sides. You're beginning to see a pattern emerge, yes. As with the bolt release, you can either drop the magazine by pushing the release button with your trigger finger, or you can press the one on the opposite side with your support thumb when you change magazines. If I shoot the gun to empty, I tend to use my trigger finger. If I'm swapping out a partial, I've been trying to use my support hand thumb just to see if it feels good or if it's any faster. I don't think it really makes a difference. The stock folds by pressing this button. When you grip the stock, your fingers will find this button naturally and it's nice and big. You'll have no trouble adjusting length of pull easily and quickly. If you flip the gun over, you can see this little plastic tab locks over this one molded into the side of the gun. Fold the stock over and give it a smack or a push to lock it over the tab. This is intentionally a bit stiff, and you want it to be. To release the stock, just give it a swift tug and snap it back into place, or fold it again to stow the gun. Though if the need arises, you can see that the ejection port is clear of the stock. The gun fires and cycles just fine with the stock folded should the need arise, though firing it in that way is less than ideal, obviously. This whole stock system is remarkably sturdy and secure. I have my charging handle on the left side of the gun, but you can easily switch it to the other side. Before we take a look at swapping the charging handle, note that the ambi ejection port lets us look into the action from either side. I can easily observe the state of the gun without having to roll it over like most guns, including the AR-15 and AK. This is a remarkably nice feature. Okay, let's swap our charging handle to the other side. First, let's take off this extended charging handle, which is a factory Beretta accessory that you can buy off their website. I highly recommend it. You can't swap the charging handle to the other side with the extension attached, though. But it's very easy to remove it. Just give it a yank and it should come right off. Pull the bolt back open to this point and pull the charging handle outward. It'll snap out and lock the bolt in place. Ensure that the bolt is in its forward position from the carrier or the handle won't have clearance. Push it through around to the other side. Push the handle in and the bolt will go home. The rifle now charges from the right side. But I want it back on the other side because I'm not some weirdo who would run this beautiful gun like an AK. So let's fix it. That's better. All right, stop it there. You can also swap ejection. When I pull the bolt back all the way, you can see that there are two extractors that also act as ejectors. With the bolt open, you can see that the right extractor is pulled away from the bolt face, while the left one is in the normal position for an extractor. As the right one moves forward away from the bolt face, the left one holds the cartridge. This lip on the inside of the right one moves out, pushing the case out of the gun. But how do we swap this? Do you see these holes on either side of the gun near the stock? Using a bullet tip or other tool, press the metal piece in the direction that you want the cases to eject. Let's press that metal piece in from the right of the gun so that the rifle will eject to the right. When we pull the bolt open, we see that the other extractor has become an ejector. This system is genius and incredibly cool. I'll show you how this works inside the gun when we take it apart. Now let's look at how to disassemble this crazy thing and how the quick change barrel system works. To take the lower off and remove the bolt, check to make sure that the gun is unloaded, obviously. For the love of Jupiter, I hope that you know that already. Next, cycle the action, put the selector on safe, and fold the stock. Push the safety lever upward, past where it ought to go. This will feel a bit strange at first. And then push in this plastic plate on the back of the receiver. It's spring-loaded, but it will have some give. Simultaneously pull down on the grip. Some force is going to be necessary, but not too much, and we have to give it a little loving tap, especially if the gun is relatively new. And this is awkward as fuck with the camera in the way. It's really awkward whether the camera is here or not, though. This is just fucking awkward. You'll now be able to pull off the lower a bit. You can see that this plastic piece closes up the back of the receiver and keeps the bolt in. I'd show you my trigger pack, but it doesn't look much like a standard one at this point. To remove the bolt, we need to get the charging handle out of the way. This is kind of like how we swapped it to the other side. Remove the extended handle if you've got one, and pull the bolt back to the point where you can lock the charging handle outward, just like we did when we were switching it to the other side. Rotate the handle forward, again like we did before, into the gun and out of the way, but don't push it through to the other side. Leave it pointing at the barrel, facing toward it. I know it's strange, but this will let you remove the bolt and springs from the gun. Pulling the bolt assembly out, we see a multi-lug rotating barrel, similar to the AR-15 and later AR-180. When we look at the larger bolt and carrier assembly, we see that this thing is distinctly descended from the AR-180, as so many of the fancy new rifles are. Though the bolt assembly might not look exactly like the AR-180, that's definitely the inspiration. These two springs beneath the recoil spring are for the super cool ejection system. The way these work is they interface with that plate on the lower assembly that holds the bolt carrier in the gun. You see this metal plate inside the thicker plastic one? Well, both have holes, some of which are sort of offset in a weird way, like they don't line up with anything the way you'd expect. This is what we were pressing earlier with a bullet tip to change which side the rifle ejects to. When we apply some pressure to the metal plate with our handy field expedient bullet tip, we move one hole in the metal plate in line, while the other is offset all weird and blocked. It looks weird, but it's not. This lets one extractor and spring move rearward into the plate assembly unobstructed, while the other will be held up by the plate, where the holes aren't lined up with anything, pushing the extractor forward, making it act as the ejector. Moving the plate, we can see that the other extractor is now the ejector. Holy shit, how many times can I say extractor and ejector? Jesus, I don't even know if any of this shit's going to make any sense to you, but hopefully the video aids will help. Video aids. I love the elegant simplicity of this design. It's very smart. I just love good design, and this is damn good design. This bolt definitely looks a little bit like some of the other FNR bolts, especially the SCAR and the 805 Bren. With the bolt removed, let's take a look at the quick change barrel. A warning, the bolt must be locked open or removed to take out the barrel. And if you have the bolt locked open, don't let it slam forward into the polymer receiver without the barrel or without the barrel locked all the way in place. Even if the barrel is just a tad bit out of place, you could fuck something up. You don't want to damage the receiver or potentially the trunnion, depending on how the bolt hit. It'll be safest to remove the barrel without the bolt in the gun or with the lower off to remove any spring tension from the bolt. But first, let's take a look at a few of the features at the front of the gun. Looking closely at the barrel, you can see that it has an adjustable gas block. There are two positions, standard, labeled S, and non-standard, labeled N. N is for adverse conditions, of course. To change the gas setting, put a cartridge tip in this ring and turn it to move the valve. I've left mine on standard. This rifle is so reliable, I doubt you'll ever need to change it. Even with the suppressor on, folks say that S is the right setting. There's also a stray sling swivel up front here. This thing is covered in goddamn sling attachment points. Every time I pick the gun up, I feel like it's grown a few new sling spots. To remove the barrel and gas system, pull down on these tabs on either side of the barrel. This feels like a really large, fucked up version of the tabs on a Glock. Pull on the barrel and it'll come free. You kind of have to wiggle it around to get it out of there. It's awkward and it feels like you're going to break something, but you won't. This thing is very sturdy. The barrel is nice and thin, a true pencil. It thickens somewhat as you get closer to the chamber and trunnion area, as you would expect a barrel to do. I love this profile. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I hate thick barrels. We live in an era of properly heat-treated barrels, meaning that heavy ones just no longer offer the advantages that they once did. Big heavy barrels just aren't necessary anymore. Sucks lugging them around. They slow down target transitions. They negatively impact balance. And they take for goddamn ever to cool down once they get hot. This barrel helps the gun to feel fantastic. Above the barrel, you can see the piston. I cleaned the piston itself before making this video, but I didn't wipe underneath it. Folks say that DI systems are much dirtier than piston ones, but all that shit still has to go somewhere. On a piston gun, it collects right here in the piston. On a DI gun, it collects around the BCG, but it also gets blown out of the gun by the gas. Everything is a give and take. The ARX is said to be a short stroke piston, but the throw of this piston is a little longer than some of the other short stroke FNR pistons. It's more of a medium stroke piston, maybe. Don't get me wrong, it's still a very short throw, but not as short as some. I think this helps the recoil impulse to feel less sharp and maybe a little bit more AK-like, perhaps. So why the quick change barrel? In addition to swapping calibers and lengths at home, or if you have an SBR stamp for yours, this thing really makes sense for a service rifle, right? Maybe different folks in a unit might want rifles configured differently, just like civilians might. But this is also about maintenance. If something goes wrong, you can easily swap out a spare barrel and complete gas system in like 10 seconds. It's amazing. You can do this with the STEYR AUG as well. But I like the way it comes out of the ARX a little bit more. So if you shoot out your barrel, just swap it. If you break the piston somehow, just swap the whole assembly in the moment and worry about getting it fixed later. Easy as pie, as we say in the South. More than that, cleaning this is a breeze. My God, I've never seen a rifle this easy to clean. It's crazy how simple it is. Snake the barrel, clean the locking surfaces where the lugs from the bolt fit in, clean the gas system, you're good. And you can see exactly what you're doing and how clean it is. It's so simple. It's so genius. I love it. So yeah, it'd be cool to swap the barrel and all that shit. Really, this is about cleaning. Let's put it all back together. Lock the barrel in first, kind of wiggle it around until it finds where it wants to be and snaps back in place. There we go. Now let's put the bolt back. Make sure the charging handle is facing forward. Slide the bolt back in and find that spot where you can get the charging handle rotated back to the side where you want it and pop it back into place. Holding the lower bit, push the selector lever up past safety so that you can move that spring-loaded plastic receiver plate. Kind of work that back into place and use the palm of your hand to gently whack the lower back on. Put your extended charging handle, if you've got one, back on the gun and check function. Maybe unfold the stock if you like, and you're back in business. Why should you choose this gun? For this part of the video, usually I tell you why you might potentially buy whatever product I'm reviewing over other similar products. But in this case, it's very hard to actually buy one of these. They pop up on Gunbroker from time to time, but they aren't exactly what I'd call common. Still, how does it compare to the other modern 5.56 rifles? And how does it compare to the good old DI AR-15? This gun's competitors when it was on the market were the CZ Bren, the Bushmaster ACR, the FN Scar 16, and maybe the Tommy built T36, since that's the closest thing to the HK G36 that they'll let us pitiful serfs possess. Maybe we should throw the polymer bullpups like the Tabor and the AUG in there too. All of the fancy new rifles. When you pick up the Bren and the ACR, you immediately notice these are heavy guns at about 8 pounds. The same thing goes for the bullpups, the Tabor and the AUG. I weighed my ARX and it's about 1.5 pounds less than some of those other guns. The Beretta is the same weight as those heavier guns, but with a light optic and foregrip. That really matters. Most of the guns that we're talking about take at least some cues from the AR-15, and a few of them borrow as much of the AR-15's ergonomic characteristics as they possibly can. Also, all of these FNRs have military triggers, and by that I mean they're mostly shitty and heavy to varying degrees, some better than others, of course, but just know that going into it, you can learn to shoot one of these triggers just fine. In the case of the ARX, the mil-spec trigger is crisp, if not very heavy, making it sort of completely neutral, neither good nor bad. These guns all charge with a more traditional charging handle than something like the AR-15's T-handle, which I think is a genius part of the AR-15 design. Most of them have some kind of thumb safety and then a bolt release. So why am I not weighing these against each other more heavily, these FNRs? Every gun that we're discussing is pretty good. We're to a point where we have mostly figured out what needs to be where on a military rifle for it to be easy to use. And there's not much point in comparing accuracy either. As a general rule, these rifles on this list, they aren't going to produce the accuracy that we're accustomed to from just regular ass DI AR-15s. But they're still plenty accurate, and that's not even a concern really for me. 2 to 4 MOA, it's pretty normal for a military rifle. Some are more accurate, some less. Some of these might go lower. Some say the FN SCAR 16 will do really fancy groups with hand loads. Our community makes so much out of accuracy, but for guns like these, as long as they're under like 6 MOA, they're plenty accurate. Don't fucking worry about it. So I guess we need to take a look at the features of these FNRs instead. That might be a better way to compare them. Many of the guns on our list offer exciting new features, but none offer quite as many as the ARX here. Like many of the FNRs, the ARX has a lot of ambidextrous features, but none of them have as many as the Beretta. Everything is ambi and can be switched using only the tip of a bullet in the field in less than a minute or so, as you saw earlier. The selector switch is ambi, though that's not noteworthy in 2020. The mag release is ambi. The bolt release is ambi. Fine. But the ability to swap the ejection direction with a bullet tip, that's fucking wild. Also, ejection direction sounds like a terrible jam band that yuppies follow around the country. And you have the ability to swap the charging handle side. That's really, really cool. And the rifle is pretty much mirrored on both sides with the exception of how the stock folds and a few other little things. If you're left-handed, this crazy-ass thing might be the best thing for you, depending on how much you struggle with right-handed stuff. This is one of the ones that you should at least take a look at to satisfy your curiosity as a lefty. Then there's the quick swapping barrel. The STEYR AUG has a similar system, and this idea is certainly borrowed from that gun. Does a civilian benefit from swapping the barrels? No, and that's probably why the other FNRs, besides the AUG, don't really let you do that. And since Beretta never offered other calibers, it's kind of a wasted idea, and it makes me very sad. Sometimes you'll see the short barrels come up for sale, but you obviously have to SBR your ARX to use the barrel because the NFA is fucking dumb. Beretta did not sell many of these rifles. We, the gun-buying public, never invested in the ARX, so Beretta never invested in it either. But you have to wonder, if they'd offer a ton of cool accessories, would it have helped sales? I'd wager it would have, and I bet it would have improved our opinion of this rifle. The idea with this barrel swapping bit isn't to let you change the barrel when it gets hot, which is one of the very fucking dumb things I've read online. Not this gun, it's just to let you change the configuration of this rifle like the AUG, to let this gun be many things to many people. Without the extra bits necessary to use the gun in this way, the swapping does still have a use. This gun is very easy to clean. None of the other guns on our FNR list are this easy to clean, not even close. I cannot stress to you how easy it is to clean one of these guns. You just need to try it for yourself. It is so easy. So we know the rifle is lighter and more ambi with some interesting features that the other FNRs lack. What about the actual firing experience compared to the other rifles? It's kind of a mixed bag. The ARX's trigger and controls are as mil-spec stiff as those of the other FNRs, and it also has a reciprocating charging handle. A lot of the other FNRs have stopped this madness, but it's out of the way in this case, kind of where an AK charging handle would be, though potentially on the opposite side. Less of a big deal, though, in this case, and it hasn't bothered me at all, not one bit. But the grip, it has bothered me. Every other FNR has a better grip, like the G36 or replaceable grip, which is the best option of all. The ARX has neither option. The grip is like a shitty, weird take on an A2 grip that just doesn't fit me at all. It's very strange. The stock is also kind of low, so you have to choose the right optic with the right mount, and it can be a real pain in the ass. A lot of the other FNRs just let you throw AR-15 height optics on there and be done with it. Some don't, but a lot of them do. Not the ARX. Looking at the front of the rifle, a lot of the polymer-bodied guns have awkward front ends, but this is fucking ridiculous. So the handling can be a bit strange in places, but it isn't all bad. Here's where we find that the gun sort of starts to overtake the FNRs, maybe definitively. Because the gun is lighter, it's very spry and nimble, unlike most piston guns that have all that mass up front. It also handles like a DI AR-15. Very nice. The thin pencil barrel has a lot to do with that. because the lightweight barrel offsets the extra mass from the piston. But the gun's actual recoil impulse is far superior to the other modern piston guns as well, not just the handling. The ARX's piston has a slightly longer throw than some of the other short stroke guns, and I think that might serve to soften the blow of the piston against the BCG. It's remarkably soft. The other FNRs compared to an AR-15 are they're just kind of snappy. It's not unpleasant. We're still shooting 5.56, but we want every advantage we can get, and a little lighter recoil impulse is nice. The ARX is just very gentle. It makes it so that you can almost get bullets on target as fast as you can with a standard AR. That's great. Notice I said almost as fast. It's still not quite as quick, but it's headed in the right direction. And the trigger, while very heavy, it's really crisp. Though I did swap mine out. I don't hate the stock trigger at all. It's perfectly fine. And we see that the ARX offers some advantages and some disadvantages over the other fancy new rifles. But that's not unique to the ARX, really. All of the FNRs are a give and a take in this way. But should you ever consider buying one of these over an AR-15? No, hell no. No, you should not. If you're looking for one rifle to keep at your home, it should not be this one. Or really many of the other FNRs on the list for that matter. The controls feel worse, the trigger feels worse, the handling feels worse, the recoil impulse is worse, the gun is more awkward, the gun is still heavier than a DI-AR with a pencil barrel by a lot. So unless you're a lefty, that kind of changes things. You may want to take a look at it in that case. If you struggle with a standard right-handed AR, and I mean really struggle, maybe it's worth taking a look at one of these. This might just be the gun for you. But for the rest of us, buy the AR-15 first, buy a second AR-15, and then after that, if you still want one, buy one of these. How has the ARX performed? This rifle is very, very reliable. I'm impressed with how this rifle runs, and I think this system is extremely sturdy. I have complete faith in it. Looking at the ejection port, seeing how it's open on both sides, you'd assume that all kinds of shit gets in there, right? When the bolt is closed, though, that is good and sealed up tight. I've had trouble getting the gun to choke up on debris on the ground or in the air, even while firing, while laying on my side shooting under a barricade with all that sand and shit getting tossed up in the air. It doesn't care. In the south, that shooting position just throws up everything that's on the ground up into the gun. All kinds of sand, little rocks, and debris. And this gun just keeps right on running. That surprised me. Normally AR-15s do fine with that, but a lot of other designs do not. Even when the piston gets absolutely filthy, this thing keeps running. It's very robust. So this is the first piston gun that I've really enjoyed shooting, truly enjoyed, taking the good with the bad. Most of the others I've spent expensive time with were kind of a curiosity, something fun to shoot in between range days with my ARs. Usually the extra weight and snappier recoil prevented me from truly bonding with any of the FNRs. And I'm not saying that 5.56 out of any gun has substantial or even notable recoil, but if a gun has 50% more recoil than a DI AR-15, you're definitely going to see a shittier performance. It's just all in the numbers. Your split times aren't going to be as good. You're going to be slower, especially with that extra weight. It's tough for me to be excited when you look at the price tag and the gun is somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000 or more, and you're worse with it. My numbers with the ARX are much closer to my AR-15 numbers, and I feel a lot more confident with it. I still suck, just like I do with every gun, but I suck a little bit less than I would with some of the other piston options. Initially, I felt like this grip was an impediment to my enjoyment of the rifle. I have to hold my wrist at this kind of awkward angle to get a good grip on the gun, and thanks to this stray finger groove, I can't get up high enough on the grip where I feel most comfortable. My hand is sort of dangling under the gun. With gloves on, I hate the grip a little bit less. It sort of assumes you're going to be wearing gloves, I think. I'm not happy with it, but you can kind of make it work. I just wish I could change the grip. I hate backup sights, so I pulled the shitty polymer ones off the gun when I got it. They're very cheaply made pop-ups, made out of Fisher-Price plastic, like they're from my first assault rifle playset. I hated them. Some folks hate the stock, but I kind of like the way it feels. I love how simple the mechanism is. It stows easily and you can fold it back into position easily. It adjusts easily. But that doesn't mean the stock isn't fucking odd with some very strange design choices, and I'll say it up front. It's not that the Beretta has a great stock. It's that the SCAR's comparable stock is so terrible that this one seems kind of decent by contrast. The Beretta stock is really low to clear the ejection port. That kind of sucks. It feels like they designed the entire feel of the stock around keeping the ejection port clear to the detriment of the gun. I suspect that was an Italian military contract requirement and not something that Beretta could change if they still wanted that sweet, sweet contract money. Because everything was built around the stock, you kind of just have to find the right optic with just the right mount, or the optic's going to be too high and you have to kind of awkwardly hold your head above the stock. No thank you. But this stock does feel really nice on my shoulder, and it feels nice on my face, so I don't really care. It works. Once you have the right mount for your optic, it feels as good as anything else, but something like the EOTech, it's going to be very, very high on this gun. Also, the front end of the ARX feels weird if you don't have some kind of foregrip. It's really massive, so I put this short little BCM on there, the one with the angle, just so I could have it facing forward a little bit. It's mounted on the little plastic rail that Beretta sells, which covers up the grenade launcher attachment spot since, I'm not going to be launching any grenades anytime soon, unfortunately. I also mounted one of my favorite rifle lights, the Surefire M600 DF, up front, and I can easily get my thumb up on the back of the light from this foregrip position. I love the way all this feels now. It's excellent, but it took some work and time to get it to feel just right for my hands. This setup might not work for you at all. You just kind of have to play around with it and figure out what's going to work. But you got to take that time to get everything the way you want it. That might be the difference between you enjoying this rifle and hating it. I swapped the trigger out for one made by Art over at Shooting Sight. He was kind enough to let me interview him a bit about the ARX trigger, and that information was very helpful. So the stock trigger is fine. It's very, very crisp, but very, very heavy. It also has a very powerful audible and tactile reset. You could do a lot worse for a trigger. The stock trigger is also mostly polymer with a few metal parts embedded at key places. That's nothing new. The AUG, then the G36 do this as well, and others, but the ARX trigger feels a bit better than those other two. Plastic triggers are often chosen by manufacturers and governments because they keep costs down. Molding a handful of plastic parts, maybe a few with embedded metal bits, is a lot cheaper than producing equivalent steel components. At least a few of them might require a bit of polishing and fitting depending on the manufacturing process. With the polymer bits, there's less of that to worry about. The shit comes out of the mold, you clean the pieces up a bit, and then they go in the gun. And polymer is remarkably durable. Look at the STEYR AUG. It has a mostly polymer trigger pack. Hell, most of that gun is polymer, and those have been working well for decades. However, a plastic trigger has some inherent limitations. That sort of trigger is going to have to feel a certain way because plastic parts, they just can't have the same geometry as metal ones. Surfaces interact in different ways. The parts in their surfaces tend to be much beefier to give the bits the necessary strength that is required of trigger components in a modern military rifle. I've seen folks online lightening the plastic triggers, and I'm kind of suspicious of this. If you want a lighter trigger, I'd recommend the one that Shooting Sight makes. Art didn't give me the trigger. I paid full price for it just like everybody else, but it makes the gun feel great. The feel is kind of a Geisley-esque, comparable to the SSA, though the shoe is very wide and feels much different. Let's take a look at how this trigger feels. There's a little bit of take-up, very smooth. Then we hit the wall, and it's very firm. Pushing through, the trigger feels like it breaks at about 5 pounds, and wow, that break is crisp. Super nice. What about the reset? Yeah, let's see. Very tactile, very audible. Unlike a Geisley, the reset doesn't deposit your finger all the way back at the start of travel. Instead, you'll find that you're just in front of the wall. The SSAE is so light you need that longer reset for safety, but with a nice 5-pound trigger, the shorter reset is perfect. You can shoot this gun very quickly while still having complete control, and to me it feels like this breaks right at about 5 pounds. Though the stock trigger isn't bad as military triggers go, this is a great trigger from Shooting Sight, and I enjoy the gun far more with it installed. With the stock trigger, I was shooting the gun well, but I knew I could get better groups, and Art's trigger confirmed this. With the new trigger, the gun shoots at 2.5 to 4 MOA, depending on the ammo. 77 grain OTMs will get it just under 2 MOAs sometimes, but usually not. This gun is plenty accurate, though. That is totally fine. Folks get so fucking worried about accuracy, but 4 MOA or more is going to hit a human-sized target out to any reasonable combat distance and a bit beyond. It's more than fine. And no, removing the barrel does not change the zero. I know, I didn't believe it either, but this system is just absolutely rock solid. I've talked a little bit about the recoil impulse, but let me gush about it here. This is the best feeling piston gun to me. Usually pistons have a little bit too much recoil for 5.56. Not a lot of recoil, but we shoot this round because it offers certain advantages to speed, letting you get a lot of rounds on target quickly. We can best take advantage of that with the AR-15's kind of DI system. It might be more accurate to say that a DI system offers such an abnormally soft recoil impulse that it offers an advantage than to say that pistons have a ton of recoil. DI guns are so gentle, you can just easily control that muzzle. A piston adds kind of a punchy snap to the impulse when the piston whacks the bolt assembly, trading speed for not that much advantage, in my opinion. Is it worth that extra recoil and loss of speed so that you can, submerge the gun in water? How often is that going to happen to you? I mean, if you do need that, a piston gun is the only thing that will do. I absolutely understand why a military unit might need a piston gun for certain things, but for the rest of us, a DI gun is the way to go. But this thing, its recoil is so gentle, I think that for once, having a piston is worth it. The benefits are in line with the slight bit of extra recoil that you have to deal with. It's very, very nice. I love the way this gun fires. It's fast at the range, only a little slower than one of my 16-inch ARs with a pencil barrel. It's also fucking fun, and I don't want to stop once I get started. There's a certain balance to this gun. With the thin pencil barrel, this thing is nimble. It's very, very nice. It's still kind of clunky compared to an AR, but much better than a lot of the other options. And before I said that I'd still recommend a DI AR-15 over the ARX, I would. That hasn't changed. You need to buy a DI AR-15 first. But what about a piston AR? Would I still recommend that over an ARX? I don't know. I think I'd rather have the ARX than a piston AR-15. I really like this gun. I really trust it. Some of the details like the grip kind of suck, but the core system is very sound. I can tell that I'm going to be enjoying this one for a long time. You might even see a second one on the channel one day, maybe the FDE model, I hope. What would I change about the ARX? Well, if there was ever a gun that deserved a second generation, this is the one. The ARX that we got is as close to the Italian service rifle as Beretta could legally release. But I think that Beretta, as they sometimes do, kind of misunderstood the market. While there are certainly military collectors in the US who wanted exactly that rifle, they are a relatively small number compared to the folks who just wanted to buy a really good gun, who don't give two shits who uses it or where. Those folks don't care what features the Italian military demanded. That's of no interest to them, and so the ARX didn't sell. But what would it have taken to make this gun a hit? Well, that answer ties into all the things that I would change about this gun. The grip needs to be removable so that we can put some grips on there that better fit our, fat American hands. It'd be nice to have a selector that doesn't feel like it's filled with sand. I'd love for the trigger to be nice and light straight from the factory. They could certainly improve the angle of the stock or add an adjustable comb. Beretta could easily add M-LOK to remove those heavy 1913 rails and lighten the gun further. This gun just needs another decade of development, as most guns do, to really refine these ideas. Compared to the AR-15, the Beretta rifle is an infant, having only begun what will hopefully be a long service life with the Italian military. But I don't think we, the American consumers, will get to see this design grow up in person. There are so many small details that need work, but the core idea is novel and great, one of the best in a long time. I just wish that they had sold more of them so that we might get to see those developments. Final thoughts. When these fancy new rifles hit the market, we all get very excited about them. Hundreds of people inundate the YouTube comments beneath promo videos and make bold commitments to buy the gun. And when they don't sell, we ask the inevitable question, why is this gun and all the rest like it inferior to the AR-15? And the answer is time. The AR-15 has been in development by multiple companies for well over half a century, and that development continues to this day, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. Odds are good that in another 30 years, we'll still be using some variation of the standard DI AR-15, and even beyond that, when we're shooting lasers out of our eyeball guns, it'll still take serious effort to push the AR-15 completely out of use. The AR-15 was great when it was released, and I'm very partial to the early ones, but it wasn't the gun that we have now. These fancy new rifles usually have a few years of development and are often designed to meet the requirements of a certain military force, and that military force is often smaller than the US military. There's no substitute for that long development time. And so we're seeing the ARX in its youth, if the design persists. Really though, all of the FNRs are still in their youth. But in my opinion, the ARX is one of the best of these modern rifles and one of the few that I almost enjoy as much as my AR-15s. In fact, the ARX has become my favorite piston gun. It's nowhere near as useful as my 11.5-inch AR pistol, but it's damn handy. Beretta got so much right here, it's a shame that the American civilian market won't get to see further advancements, like the ARX 200, this rifle's .308 sibling. There's a lot to love here. If you get a chance to shoot the ARX, or better yet, maybe buy one, take the opportunity. Not only is it a cool piece of military history, it's a really great rifle too, weird faults and all. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you soon. Good night.